Welcome back to Amplify Hope Today. I am Simon T. Bailey. I am so happy that you're here because today I'm going to share with you the ding that reframes everything. And you're probably saying, Si, what in the world are you talking about? Well, if you've listened to the last couple of episodes, I've been focusing on the dent, this dent. Didn't can't, this happened, that happened. And for me, just to kind of encapsulate it, the didn't can of emotion that I was feeling is that, yep, I've been married 3 times, true confession, and I've gone through 3 divorces. I had a $500,000 IRS debt that was owed from the first marriage, and folks, it was real. Along the way, I got diagnosed with prostate cancer. Thank goodness I am totally cancer-free. But going through that whole process was a bit of a challenge. And then experiencing death. So divorce, debt, diagnosis, and the death of my father, who I miss every single day. And I went to Buffalo, New York, where I grew up, to surprise my mom for Mother's Day. And about 3 a.m. Sunday morning, I flew in on Saturday night. I checked into a hotel, 3 a.m. Sunday morning. I couldn't sleep, and I got up, and I started bawling. And you're probably like, what is going on? Because some 43 years ago, when I was living in Buffalo, I had this dream that I would be somebody one day. I was 14, between 14 and 17. And as I was thinking about my life, everything had went south. Didn't can. And at 3 a.m., I just started bawling. And I said, you know what? This is something has got to change. Something has got to break. And it did. The floodgates of my soul opened up, and I had that ding. And you're probably saying, Simon, what is the ding? The ding is when the doorbell of your soul rings to say it is time to move in a new direction and embrace it. And here's what the research says, and I captured this, and I wanted to make sure I anchor this. So there was a peer-reviewed meta-analysis published in the Clinical Psychology Review, and it says scientists have clinically named what they call this shift in perspective when you decide that enough is enough. They call it cognitive reappraisal. In simple terms, it means changing what a moment means to you. And the research says this is the single most powerful thing a human being can do to recover from adversity. It's what I would call the ding. So I have the ding, the doorbell of my soul says, are you ready? Are you ready to move on from this? And as I was processing, I was also praying. And I said, God, I want to forgive myself for all of the adversity, everything that I had gone through, because I was beating myself up and I was living in that land of Dentville. And I wanted something different. And the moment I began to pray and I released and I let it go, I realized that I was walking into, how do I say this? I was walking into something new, something fresh, something different. I didn't want to stay in Dentville. And I happened to be talking with a coach who gave me an exercise to do. And the exercise was write a letter to God and then write back a letter as if it's from God to yourself. And guess what? That became another marker for me. That was the ding, the doorbell when everything truly became this cognitive reappraisal. So I want to share with you the letter that I wrote to God, if you don't mind. And I'm going to forewarn you that at some point, as I read this letter and that I wrote to God, it's direct. So 43 years ago, I had a dream that I was on a rocket soaring. The higher I went and the more I looked up, I went up. The moment I looked down in the dream, I came down. Over all this time, I felt like a dented can of a troubled life. Dent after dent, there was no ding. Divorce number 1, dent. College dropout, dent. Suicide, dent. $500,000 in debt, dent. Divorce number 2, dent. Going to therapy, dent. 7 figures of business disappearing in 7 days during the pandemic, dent. Renting a home after owning a home, dent. Divorce number 3, dent. Diagnosis with prostate cancer, dent. And living in the land of Dentville, I didn't have any friends. I was by myself. And those friends that were close to me, I couldn't go into depth as to what was happening inside of me. Have you ever been in a place where you don't know who to talk to? Who can you be transparent with? Who can you be honest with and they don't judge you? So in my mind, I had built up a story that if I share with my friends everything that I've gone through, they're like, oh my goodness, you're the guy that talk about brilliance and you're not very brilliant right now. So I wrote this letter, and then I said at 57 years of age, are you just a sad sack of flesh? And then I wrote the letter back from God. And I'm just going to forewarn you, I might take this to Sunday morning. And what I mean by that is my favorite day of the week is Sunday, because Sunday is the beginning of a brand new week. So here's the letter that I imagine that God was writing back to me. When you were a seed in your mother's womb, I marked you for greatness. That's why your grandmother prayed for you for 40 years with her prayer partner. You have survived because of the compound interest of prayers that have come up before me. The dream that you had 43 years ago was just a snapshot of what I intended to bring forth 40 years later. Everything that I do from time to time is in a 40-year pattern. Moses on the backside of the wilderness for 40 years. The children of Israel walking around the wilderness for 40 years. Jesus, the Son of God, fasting and praying 40 days and 40 nights. What may have seemed like a dent is now a ding. The divorces, you survived them because you chose to be better instead of bitter. Let me just pause before I go on. No matter what you go through, if you are someone who's gone through a divorce or you know someone that's going through a divorce, the one thing I can honestly say, learning how to be better, to say, how was I at the scene of the situation? What did I contribute? And when I look at each of my divorces, it was my fault. It was on me. I am the person that filed in each case. And I ran away from those relationships because I was not willing to step up and put truth on the table. Now, I'm not saying that I have commitment issues. You think? But what I realized in going to therapy, there were some areas in my life that I had never addressed. So when I talk about becoming better instead of bitter, it was really up to me. What was I doing to become a better human being? Here's the other interesting thing. It took me 10 years to finish my college education. I didn't go the normal 4 years. I dropped out of school because my parents couldn't pay for me to go back to school. But I realized, in the words of my father, the best hand that will feed you is the one at the end of your wrist. So what do you call a person where it takes them 10 years to finish their degree? They're called a graduate. Yeah, they're called a graduate. And we got it done. Then I went back to school at 55 and got an executive MBA. Who goes back to school over 50? I did, because what I recognized, the conversations that I was having with customers, they were changing. And if I was going to truly practice AI, actual intelligence, I needed to acquire new ways of thinking. And that's why I went back to school. And guess what? That was a ding. That's right. The doorbell of the soul was ringing. Ding. I finished it. And I did it in a year. Going to therapy was an awakening of letting go. Ding. Living in Dentville with hurry and worry and realizing I needed to make friends with Ready and Steady. Ding. Losing 7 figures during the pandemic was a test. Ding. And I still woke up every day when it was easier to be stressed out. Somehow God allowed me to find joy in the midst of sorrow. Ding. God blessed me with a house after renting for 10 years. Ding, ding. To remind me that in my darkest hour, He will never leave me nor forsake me. Ding, ding. My healing and becoming whole from prostate cancer was a ding, ding to ring the bell. And then I am still God, and I changeth not. So my son, you have emerged from the cocoon of being dented to emerge into the greatest season of your life. The dings have compounded and have brought you to a place of amplified hope. Hope is your rebellion. Now go forth and invite others to ding, ding with hope. The dent can be summed up in this manner. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are new. Ding, ding, ding. So for me, when I wrote that, both sides of the situation, it shifted my perspective, because at 3 a.m. in the morning, I began to realize that I didn't have to stay dented. I can embrace the ding to reframe where I wanted to go. Now, here's a question for you. What's that ding for you? What's at the doorbell? That doorbell of your soul. What's ringing? And have you answered the ding? And if you did, how's it going? What was the practical step that you have taken to change your situation? No longer waiting for anybody to come and to rescue you. And what I want to say, especially to the men, if you are waiting for someone to rescue you, newsflash, they're not coming. But when you decide that something has got to change, something has got to give, what's that step that you can take? I realize that relationships are a challenge, both personally and professionally. And in my own journey, many times the reason the relationships were a challenge is because I had selective hearing instead of authentic listening. And because of my selective hearing, hard-headed, want to do things my way or the highway, I tend to be a bit of a control freak. I know you can't tell. And what I recognize, I had to get out of my way. And I had to decide, okay, Simon T. Bailey, if you are going to continue to go down this path, you are going to be helpless and hopeless. But if you want something different, you got to do something different. So for me, it was literally, how do I want to say this? It was becoming broken from the inside out. Surrendering to God. To say, God, I want to be a better man. I want to be a better father. I want to be a better human being. And I am tired of feeling inadequate. And I know for those of you that are listening to me, and for those who certainly know me, you're like, what? Yeah, because I have masked dysfunction really well. And at 3 a.m., I said, no more. Something's got to give. And the change must start in me. I mean, think about this. Here I am, speaking all over the world, written books, giving advice, and in my own life, the advice that I was giving out, I was not living. What a hypocrite. Like, what the heck, dude? And when I decided to say, you know what? I want to change. And the next day, so that was Sunday, I went to see my mom, surprised her at church for Mother's Day. She's like, I knew you were coming, because I had just talked to her and didn't really tell her like where I was. And I sat in that little church in the hood. I sat there and I felt so free because I let it go. I let go of who I thought I needed to be endorsed, to be liked, to be received by others. And the moment I let it go, I saw my mom, we spent the day together. And before I left, my mama said, give me your hand. And my mama prayed for me. My mama prayed for me. At 85, she prayed for me. And her prayer was, everything is going to be okay. That was the ding that I needed, that mama prayed for me, and it confirmed what I had experienced at 3 a.m. that I didn't tell her about. But because of the umbilical cord of awareness, she began to lean into some things. And when I left her, I was walking a little bit lighter. I don't know where you are in your journey. And I didn't mean to turn this into a church experience. But what I've come to realize, I am who I am. I love God with all of my heart. And I have not been the best Christian man that I could be. But I want to be better. And being better starts with honesty. Starts with putting truth on the table. I want to invite you into looking in the mirror at yourself. And you may not believe like I believe, but is there something that you've decided that you're going to let go? Number one. Number two, why are you letting it go? Because I believe if we understand the why behind the what, we can find the how. And normally when I do episodes, I'm very prescriptive and I invite you to consider doing 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to do that today. What I really want to invite you to think about, could you write a letter to God about what you think about where you are, how you are doing right now where you are? Can you write that letter? And then what would it be like to write as if God was writing a letter back to you? And you may say, Simon, I'm not sure if I even believe that there is a God, and it is not my responsibility during this episode to convince you one way or another if there is a God. But what I would invite you to consider, whatever your belief might be, what would it be like to have a letter that you write as if it was God talking to you? What would he say? How would you experience the cognitive reappraisal where you decide that I'm going to change how I choose to see this moment? And when I change how I choose to see this moment, everything could potentially change. And I'm not trying to blow smoke or sell anything to you as it relates to the ding, but I want to invite you to write the letter, because writing, I believe, is therapeutic. When you get it out of you on paper, if you think it, ink it. I know that sounds like a cliche, but you're getting it out of you on paper to say, here's what I think it could be. And then when you do this, here is the next thing to consider. What's one actionable step that you can take before midnight, before your head hits the pillow, before you shut it down, as it relates to what you've written? And when you zoom out and you think about it, how do you zoom back in and say, I think today, here's what I'm going to do. And if you do this before midnight, this is the commitment that you are making to yourself. As you enter into the night season, could it be that as you wake up the next day, there will just be a breath of fresh air? You might hear the birds for the first time. You might enjoy a little vitamin D as you drink some warm water with a lemon, and you're just entering into the day to say, I love the skin that I'm in. I have answered the ding, the doorbell of the soul, and I am walking into new possibilities. That is the epitome of Amplify Hope. So when I talk about Amplify Hope and connecting it to the ding, I want to let you know, Amplify Hope is a belief that creates a behavior for a better tomorrow. And it starts with me. If I develop a belief that I can let go of whatever I've been dealing with, and I can take that micro step to behave intentionally. And if you notice, I'm being kind of repetitive in what I'm saying, repetition for reinforcement, then that micro step of creating that behavior moving in a positive direction creates a better world, starting with you. So listen, amplifiers, I want to say thank you so much for joining me today. Would you be so kind to share this episode with someone that you believe could benefit from it? And certainly leave a comment, and know that wherever you are, I see you. I celebrate you. You matter. The world needs what you have to offer now more than ever before. I want you to know that you, oh brilliant amplifier, you have something in you that no one else does. And despite everything that you've gone through, if you can look up, you can get up. What? Yes, yes, you can. Because you have decided to create a new belief that impacts behavior, that creates a better world. So I will see you next time. And remember, you are absolutely, positively brilliant. Why? Because Simon says so.